5-Year Club video number 58. Today is Friday, February 23rd, 2018. Not a particularly exciting day in the 2018 5-Year Club series, but we have a quality article lined up for your enjoyment. I'm going to read through this. This is from The Atlantic. A woman washes dishes in her trailer in Santa Monica, California. This is what life without retirement savings looks like. Many seniors are stuck with lives of never-ending work, a fate that could befall millions in the coming decades. By Alana Simuels. Hopefully pronounced correctly. Corona, California. Roberta Gordon never thought she'd still be alive at age 76. She definitely didn't think she'd still be working. But every Saturday she goes down to the local grocery store and hands out samples, earning $50 a day because she needs the money. I'm a working woman again, she told me in the common room of the senior apartment complex where she now lives here in California's Inland Empire. Gordon has worked dozens of odd jobs throughout her life. As a house cleaner, a home health aide, a telemarketer, a librarian, a fundraiser. But at many times in her life, she didn't have a steady job that paid into Social Security. She didn't receive a pension. And she definitely wasn't making enough to put aside money for retirement. So now at 76, she earns $915 a month through Social Security and through Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, a program for low-income seniors. Her rent, which she has had to cover solo since her roommate died in August, is $1,040 a month. She's been taking on credit card debt to cover the gap and to pay for utilities, food, and other essentials. She often goes to a church food bank for supplies. More and more older people are finding themselves in a similar situation as baby boomers reach retirement age without enough savings and as housing costs and medical expenses rise. For instance, a woman in her 80s is paying on average $8,400 in out-of-pocket medical expenses each year. That's about $700 a month, even if she's covered by Medicare. Many people reach retirement age Many people reaching retirement age don't have the pensions that a lot of workers in previous generations did, and often have not put enough money into their 401ks to live off of. The median savings in a 401k plan for people between the ages of 55 and 64 is currently just $15,000, according to the National Institute on Retirement Security, a nonprofit. Other workers did not have access to a retirement plan through their employer. All right, let's look at this for a second. 55 to 64. We're talking about the age around which many people get disabled, certainly 64. I would say you really want to try to be out of the game by 60. And you only have $15,000 in that account. If the rent's $1,000, that's $12,000 of that 15 has gone in the first year. That's no money. $15,000 is nothing. You might as well have zero. Other workers did not have access to a retirement plan through their employer. This is a big problem. This is a legal problem. This is our legislature betraying us. Employers should not be able to determine whether or not we have access to tax benefits around retirement. We should be able to contribute to, tax advantage retirement funds regardless of whether our employer is on the ball with respect to that benefit. That means that as people reach their mid-60s, they either have to dramatically curtail their spending, and remember I told you, $10 of monthly spending is equal to $3,000 of savings, so that's why these people, when they retire are cutting costs, because they don't have time to earn money or for investments to grow with compounding interest, and so the only option left is cutting expenses, and, it is an effective option. This means that as people reach their mid-60s, they either have to dramatically curtail their spending or keep working to survive. This will be the first time that we have a lot of people who find themselves downwardly mobile as they grow older. Diane Oakley, the executive director of the National Institute on Retirement Security, told me they're going to go from being near poor to poor. The problem is growing as more baby boomers reach retirement age. Between 8,000 to 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day, according to Kevin Prindiville, the executive director of Justice in Aging, a nonprofit that addresses senior poverty. Older Americans were the only demographic for whom poverty rates increased in a statistically significant way between 2015 and 2016, according to Census Bureau data. While poverty fell among people 18 and under and people 18 to 64 between 2015 and 2016, it rose to 14.5% for people over 65, according to the Census Bureau's Supplemental Poverty Measure, which is considered a more accurate measure of poverty because it takes into account healthcare costs and other big expenses. Okay, so it rose to 14.5%. And what was it before? It does not say. The fact that it does not say annoys me. It makes me think it's deceptive. Why wouldn't you say what it was before this? All right. Let's keep going. In the early decades of our work, we were serving communities that had been poor when they were younger, Prindiville told me. Increasingly, we're seeing folks who are becoming poor for the first time in old age. This presents a worrying preview of what could befall millions of workers who will retire in the coming decades. If today's seniors are struggling with retirement savings, what will become of the people of working age today, many of whom hold unsteady jobs and have patchwork incomes that leave little room for retirement savings? The current wave of senior poverty could just be the beginning. 2/3 of Americans don't contribute any money to a 401k or other retirement account, according to Census Bureau researchers. And this could have larger implications for the economy. If today's middle-class households curtail their spending when they retire, the whole economy could suffer. All right, so that's 2/3. Where is this? So it says 2/3 of Americans don't contribute any money to a 401k or other retirement account, according to Census Bureau researchers. Does this include babies? Does this include toddlers and teenagers? And does this include people who have already reached the age of 59 and so in theory should be finished saving for retirement? We don't know. The article doesn't say, but that would matter a lot when you're evaluating how much that statistic matters. Again, very annoying. The retirement savings system in the United States has 3 pillars: Social Security, employer-sponsored pensions or retirement savings plans, and individual savings. But with the rise of less stable jobs and the decline of pensions, a larger share of older Americans are relying only on Social Security without either of the 2 other pillars to contribute to their finances. This, by definition, means they have less money than they did when they were working. Social Security replaces only about 40% of an average wage earner's income when they retire, while financial advisors say that retirees need at least 70% of their pre-retirement earnings to live comfortably. Today's seniors are so reliant on Social Security in part because companies that once provided pensions began in the 1970s to turn the responsibility of retirement savings over to individuals. Rather than defined benefit plans, in which people are guaranteed a certain amount of money every year in retirement, they receive defined contribution plans, which means the employer sets aside a certain amount of money per year. This switch saved companies money because it asked employees, not employers, to take on the risks associated with long-term investing. This means that the amount people receive is more affected by the ups and downs of the stock market, their individual wages, and interest rates. In 1979, 28% of private sector workers had participated in defined benefit retirement plans. By 2014, just 2% did. So we went from 28% to 2% when it comes to defined benefit plans, according to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, a nonprofit. By contrast, 7% of private sector workers participated in a defined contribution plan in 1979, and by 2014, that was 34%. So defined contribution plan, we go from 7% to 34%. So they're going in opposite directions. Let's talk about what retirees need to live comfortably. This says 70%. I've also heard the number 80%. So this 40% number is obviously not hitting 70 or 80. It's about half, I guess, of what you would need. It's 6.5% that comes out of your paycheck for Social Security, but it's 6.5% that they charge your employer also. That's 13% total. If you were investing 13% of your income into the S&P 500 or the stock market average from the time you were 22 to the time you were 60, you would definitely have 70% of your income to live on for the rest of your life. You would definitely be able to retire comfortably. But because the return from Social Security is so crappy, because they have messed up that system, they're taking that money away from you and basically losing all of that opportunity cost, and now they can only return 40% of what you need back to you instead of you being able to get what you need from it. That's a tragedy. And I'm mentioning it because it's something that's like it's underlying this article. I believe this article is a good article. I believe that it is explaining the plight of retirement for Americans, and people need to know this stuff. It's clear when I read it, though, that it leaves out certain things. For example, it talks about what defined contribution plans mean. So it says, this switch saved companies money because it asked employees, not employers, to take on the risks associated with long-term investing. This means that the amount people receive is more affected by the ups and downs of the stock market, their individual wages, and interest rates. The ups and downs of the stock market, their individual wages, and interest rates. You know what this doesn't say? It doesn't say that the amount people receive is influenced by their savings rate, which is influenced by their behavior. It doesn't say that the amount that you get at retirement on a defined contribution plan is impacted by your personal choices. And I think leaving that fact out is very common, especially in publications like The Atlantic that lean to the left. The role of individual choice and individual thinking and effort and outcomes is left out of the equation. It's like it doesn't matter. Everyone's a victim because you're a victim to the ups and downs of the stock market, or whatever wage someone else chooses to pay you, or interest rates that the government decides. You had no role in deciding what your savings rate was going to be. Definitely not. All right, let's keep going. And I did get there. Yeah, I did get there. All right. The recession and economic trends in the years since have also worsened the finances of millions of seniors. Some bought homes during the housing boom and then found they owed more on their homes than they were worth and had to walk away. Others invested in the stock market and saw their investments shrink dramatically. Jackie Matthews, now 76, lost her investments during the recession and then had to sell her Arizona home in a short sale, netting only $3,000. She now lives near her family in Southern California, renting a room in a friend's apartment, and budgets her finances carefully, skimping on meat and never buying anything new. But even people who emerged from the recession relatively unscathed may have a hard time saving, according to a 2017 report from Government Accountability Office. Shouldn't that be the Government Accountability Office? Average wages, that should have been the. Average wages, when adjusted for inflation, have remained near where they were in the 1970s, which makes it hard for workers to increase their savings. This has had a significant impact on the bottom 80% of workers, for whom average wages have remained relatively constant, even as income increased for the top 20% of households in the past 3 decades. Let's see. So I'd like to point out 2 things. Number 1 is, if you were holding like a total market index going into the Great Recession, and you just didn't do anything, you just held on to it and didn't sell, you would have gotten all your money back. You would not have lost all of your money. If Jackie Matthews lost her investments during the recession. I don't know exactly what that means. Did she sell them? Did she get scared and sell out of the stock market? Or was she invested in some very narrow thing that failed during the recession? I don't know. This article doesn't say. I just want to point out that, as I recommend, if you put your money into something like VTI or something like an S&P 500 index fund, you would not have lost all of your investments during the Great Recession. That's a fact. You can look it up on a stock chart. The other thing I think is that average wages, when adjusted for inflation, have remained near where they were in the 1970s, which makes it hard for workers to increase their savings. Well, I mean, average wages is one thing, right? So you would expect that as somebody works throughout their career from age 20 to age 50, then their wage will go up. And as the wage goes up, they would be able to save more. The average wage would include people of all different age ranges. So the average wage, even if for an individual it's increasing, so they'd be able to save more, the average wage, which includes everybody, could stay the same, and people would still be able to save more as they got older. Now, I don't know what this says about the costs. I mean, it says this is adjusted for inflation. So, I mean, if that's the inflation of costs, then you should be able to save as much now as you would have been able to save in the 70s. And so if people who were saving in the 70s could retire okay, then people now should be able to retire okay. They just can't retire better. That's what I'm reading here. And if the top 20% of workers have had their wages go up, then they can retire even better than people in the 70s. But the fact that they can retire better doesn't mean that the people below them are retiring worse. They're just retiring the same. I'd like to know what the savings behavior change has been from the 70s to now. I think that would be interesting. That's how I'm reading this. Maybe average wages here means something different. They don't really say in the article. And this is Deborah Bellou, age 67, at the mobile home park where she works in Palm Springs. Oh, there's a bunch of nice palm trees. Okay, keep going. For many seniors, the answer to this lack of savings has meant working longer and longer, as Roberta Gordon is doing. Today, about 12.4% of the population aged 65 or older is still in the workforce, up from 3% in 2000. 12.4% right now, up from 3% in 2000. That's a big difference. According to Oakley, I met a woman named Deborah Bellou, who is 67 and works as a manager at a mobile home park in Palm Springs, California. She worked as a waitress for 30 years and often relied on government assistance as she raised her 2 children as a single mother. You just don't think about tomorrow when you're more worried about getting food on the table, she said. That means that today, though she receives money through Social Security, she can't afford a cell phone or a TV. Her rent is $600 a month. She works full-time at the mobile home park despite aches and pains in her back and feet. Sometimes when she wakes up, she can't walk, but she says, I can't quit. There's no way I can live on $778 a month, the amount she receives from Social Security. So age 67, and aches and pains in her back and feet. This is age. And so if your plan is to be working at 67, according to Deborah, sometimes when you'll be waking up at age 67, you can't walk, but you can't quit. Because, if you're like her, you didn't plan, and so you can't live on $778 a month. You have to keep going no matter what. It's not this problem doesn't have an easy solution, because the person responsible for her retirement was her, and she didn't plan for it. These troubles can be particularly hard on women. That's in part because they typically receive lower benefits than men do. And I'm going to pause right there because I think this is an important point. Women oftentimes will not work the same types of jobs, will not work jobs that pay as much. Women many times will take time off to take care of family, to take care of kids, to have kids, and all kinds of things. And I think that these are personal choices everybody makes, and everyone is responsible for preparing them, and people should have these choices available to them. And I strongly believe that if a woman or a man wants to stop working to take care of their kids and they're married and their spouse continues to work, or if they just want to go, balls to the walls and work really hard their entire life, whatever the situation is, you need to plan as a couple ahead of time for this stuff to work out. In particular, this is going to mean that if you're a woman and you know that your income is less, or you know that you're going to be working for fewer years and so receiving less Social Security when you are older, you need to discuss that with your husband. And you need to have a plan together to set aside money, enough money for both people, even if only one person is working. And you need to be very deliberate about planning the correct amount of money for both people, and very deliberate about planning a correct amount of money where if that marriage doesn't last, as many do not, that even if you're not married, your finances are still going to work out. And I think that's an act of love. And that's something that needs to be paid attention to ahead of time. There are things like a spousal IRA that a working spouse can contribute to on behalf of the non-working spouse. This is an important conversation to have. And I think a lot of people don't have it, which is why we're reading these troubles can be particularly hard on women. In 2014, older women received, on average, $4,500 less annually in Social Security benefits than men did. They received lower wages when they worked, which leads to smaller monthly checks from Social Security. They also are more likely to take time off from work to care for children or aging parents, which translates to less time contributing to Social Security and thus lower monthly benefit amounts. This is hard because if you have two people working and someone gets sick and someone's already making less money, then it makes more sense for them to quit to take care of that problem. But then they get even further in the hole because, Social Security is not being put away for them. And so, this is, again, something that has to be compensated for by the spouse who is still working. At least Bellew and others are physically able to work. Some seniors without retirement savings or a safety net have become homeless in recent years as housing costs have risen and they find themselves without the ability to generate income. I see more homeless seniors than I've ever seen before, Rose Mays, the executive director of the nonprofit Fair Housing Council of Riverside County, just east of Los Angeles, told me. In America in 2016, nearly half of all single homeless adults were aged 50 and older, compared to 11% in 1990. This is another huge increase. 50 or older. The number was 11% in 1990. And now it's nearly half. 11 to, I don't know what nearly half is, 48? 11 to 48, that's 400%. That's a big increase. What can be done to help today's seniors and generations to come? There are two approaches, Prindiville says. Help poor save for old age and make retirement more affordable. As for the first approach, some states have been trying to establish programs that help people save for retirement through payroll deductions, even if their employers don't offer any retirement savings accounts, for example. But the Trump administration in May repealed an Obama-era rule from the Department of Labor that would have made it easier for states to help people set up these plans. And the federal government is winding down a program called MyRA that tried to encourage middle and low-income Americans to save for retirement. There are no new initiatives or strategies coming out of the federal government at a time when the need is growing, Prindiville says. And I think that's completely correct. And Trump is a douchebag for not paying attention to this. He doesn't care. He's so rich, he doesn't care. He doesn't even see this stuff. He doesn't understand how much healthcare costs or anything else. That's really clear when you listen to him talk about these issues. I think that programs that have automatic or opt-out contributions when you sign up through payroll so far are statistically the most effective thing we've come up with. And effective both in terms of efficiency, because the money gets invested and not just taken from someone else like Social Security, and effective also because people actually participate. And I think the participation rates are as high as 70 or 80% when they do studies on, opt-out systems rather than opt-in systems. The second approach might mean expanding affordable housing options, creating programs to help seniors cover medical costs, and reforming the supplemental security income program so that poor seniors can receive more benefits. But there does not seem to be much of an appetite for such ideas in Washington right now. In fact, the Trump administration has proposed cutting money from SSI as well as the Social Security Disability Income Program. These initiatives can make the difference between having a home and some semblance of stability and not. Roberta Gordon in Corona was barely scraping by when I talked to her. A few months later, she was much more stable. Why? She'd gotten off a wait list and had been accepted into the housing voucher program known as Section 8, which reduces the amount of income she has to put towards housing. She's still working at 76, but she feels a little more secure now that she has more help. She knows at least that she's one of the lucky ones able in her older years to keep food on the table and a roof over her head. The reason why I prefer solutions that involve people contributing to their own retirement is because when they do that, this money is invested and it's going to work in the economy and it's doing productive things. I don't like expanding affordable housing options, creating programs to help seniors cover medical costs, and reforming the Supplemental Security Income Program, because this is simply taking money away from younger people who need that money to put towards their own retirement and then giving it to people who didn't plan and didn't pay attention to it earlier. And I understand if you have somebody who makes a high income that you say, oh, well, I'm just going to take money that they would spend on some, stuff that I don't think is important anyway and give it to this person who really needs something. I understand charitable giving. I understand the desire to do that. Man, it's not the worst thing in the world, but there's more waste in a system where that's your solution. It's a quick fix. It's a wasteful quick fix. There's a lot less waste when we can solve these things 20 years ahead of time or 30 years ahead of time, which is a big reason why I'm making these videos and talking to people now. Because the earlier that you get on this and the earlier that you start saving money and thinking about these issues and putting money away and calculating how much money you need, the easier it's going to be and the better it's going to be for you and for the whole country. And that is the end of that article. So this is the end of 5 Year Club video number 58. This is what life without retirement savings looks like. What a fun Friday night. All right. Have a great evening and have a good weekend. I'll see you on Saturday.